My name's Simon Broughton. I'm a journalist and filmmaker from London, and I'm also editor of Songlines, the world music magazine. But I'm here to talk to Shirin Ebadi. Now, Shirin Ebadi is an Iranian lawyer, a writer, and an activist, and she's become really a figurehead, an international figurehead for human rights. In Iran, she's bravely defended women in court, in the Iranian court system, and she herself has been in the notorious Evin prison in Tehran, where she discovered that the books in the library were only supposed to be read by men. She went on to be the first Iranian to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She wrote a book about her work and her experiences, and in Iran Awakening, she says, she describes fighting for an interpretation of Islam in harmony with democracy and equality, and particularly when it comes to the rights of women. So please welcome to the stage first Mariam Mousavi, who's going to help with translation, and Shirin Ebadi.
Thank you.
Shirin, let's begin by going back to that time in September 2003 when you learnt you'd been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. You were in Paris, but returned a day or two later to Tehran and got a fantastic reception at the airport. But you've been a sort of needle in their side for so long. Were you surprised at the welcome you got when you got to Iran?
من سالها از متهمان سیاسی و عقیدتی در ایران دفاع کرده بودم و میدونستم که مردم ایران من رو دوست دارن.
I had It is on, okay. I'd represented prisoners of conscience in Iran for many years, so I knew that I was popular in Iran among the people.
و به هر حال از اینکه این همه مردم آمده بودن به استقبال من در حالتی که میدونستن حکومت با من میانش خیلی بده، این برای من خیلی جالب بود و من همیشه به یاد محبت‌های مردم هستم.
But in any case, seeing that I got such a warm reception from the people on my arrival at the airport, and these people knew how the government felt about me, I was very impressed, I was very touched, and I will always be grateful to the people for that.
And was it a popular people's welcome rather than the government welcome?
مردم بودن که آمدن، جامعه مدنی و از هر گروه‌های مختلف و ضمناً تعدادی از نمایندگان پارلمان هم که اون موقع جزء رفرمیستا بودن آمدن.
It was the people, it was members of the civil society representing various groups, and also there were several members of Iranian parliament because at the time the reformists had the majority in parliament.
و همون موقع رئیس جمهور ایران آقای خاتمی در پاسخ به یک خبرنگار که سوال کرده بود چرا به عبادی تبریک نگفتی، گفتش که این جایزه صلح نوبل خیلی مهم نیست، ادبیاتشه که مهمه.
And I remember at the time they asked the then President Khatami, why haven't you congratulated Shirin Ebadi for winning this prize? And he responded by saying, oh, the Nobel Peace Prize isn't so important. It's the Nobel Prize for Literature that is important.
Going back to the revolution of 1979, you were a supporter of the revolution at the beginning, and then you write in the book, the history of the revolution demanded your defeat. When did that become apparent? Sorry, not the history, I think the victory of the revolution demanded your defeat. Yes.
من در ابتدا جز افرادی بودم که با انقلاب 1979 موافق بودم، ولی که خیلی زود نظرم عوض شد و بهتون میگم چه روزی بود.
Initially, I was among those who was in favor of the 1979 revolution. I supported it. But then soon afterwards, I changed my mind, and I'm going to tell you why.
بعد از اینکه انقلاب پیروز شد، درست 40 روز بعدش 8 مارس 1979 بود. در اون روز نماینده خمینی از رادیو اعلام کرد که زنانی که در ادارات دولتی کار میکنند بایستی رو سری سر کنند و همون روز ما یک تظاهراتی علیه حجاب بود که شرکت کردم و از همون روز فهمیدم که راه من با این حکومت جدا شده.
I remember it was some 40 days after the 1979 revolution. It was, to be exact, 8th of March 1979, when one of Khomeini's representatives said on the radio that all women in workplaces must now observe the hijab and wear the headscarf. So women, they staged this demonstration against the hijab, and I remember taking part in that demonstration, and it was on that day that I decided my path is now separate from that of the authorities.
بعد از انقلاب 1979 یک دومینویی شروع شد برای بنیادگرایی اسلامی که می‌بینیم اثراتش همینطوری به ترتیب توی خاورمیانه آمده.
It was in the wake of the 1979 Islamic Revolution that this kind of domino effect, we witnessed this domino effect, which actually it was initiated from the revolution. And now we can see the results of that Islamic fundamentalism throughout the Middle East and the region.
و متاسفم که استعمارگران و فروشندگان اسلحه وضعیت رو طوری پیش آوردن که مردم خاورمیانه رو مجبور میکنن بین دیکتاتوری و امنیت انتخاب بکنن، در حالتی که ما نه دیکتاتوری میخوایم و همین که امنیت رو هم میخوایم.
And I am very sorry to see that because of the colonialists and the arms sellers, those who trade in the sale of arms, that people have become so desperate that they feel they have to choose between fundamentalism or security. No, we do not want fundamentalism, and we want security.
Under the law in the Islamic Republic, there's iniquitous discrimination between men and women. For instance, a woman's life being worth only half of a man's life, and a woman's testimony in court being worth less than a man's. You said, you write, Islam, like any religion, is subject to interpretation. It can be interpreted to oppress women or to liberate them. How did you go to do your job, bearing that in mind? How could you do that in court?
باید بگم که کار راحتی نیست و این مستلزم این است که شما خیلی خوب مذهبتون رو بشناسید.
I must say it is not an easy job, and it warrants a good knowledge of your religion. You should possess that knowledge.
35 ساله که حکومت جمهوری اسلامی دنبال اینه که از من یک اشتباه بگیره و بگه که تو مرتدی و حکم قتل من رو شرعاً بده.
For 35 years, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been trying to find me make a mistake or a fault somewhere in my work so they can turn around and say to me, you're an apostate, and apostasy is punishable by death.
اما موفق نشدن.
Yet they have not been successful.
من با حجاب اسلامی مخالفم، با حجاب اجباری مخالفم.
I am against forced hijab.
من با قوانین مجازات اسلامی مثل سنگسار و قطع دست مخالفم.
I am against the Islamic penal code such as the cutting of limbs and also stoning to death.
من با حکومتی که بر مبنای مذهب بنا شده باشه مخالفم.
I am against a government which is based on religion.
من با اعدام و هر نوع قصاص مخالفم.
I am against all kinds of capital punishment, including qisas or lex talionis, retribution.
من معتقدم زن و مرد کاملا برابرن.
I believe that men and women are totally equal.
معتقدم مسلمان با غیر مسلمان کاملا برابرن.
I believe that Muslims and non-Muslims have totally equal rights.
و اینها رو طوری بیان میکنم که حکومت نتوانسته از من ایراد بگیره و بگوید تو برخلاف اسلام حرف میزنی.
And I have expressed such views of mine in such a way that the government has been unable to say to me, oh, you've made a mistake and you're speaking against the religion.
World Woman began this afternoon with the Iranian singer Masa Vardat singing here on stage, something which would be illegal back home in Tehran, a woman singing to a mixed audience. I suspect it's something that you're against. How do you argue in an Islamic way for the singing of women?
بنیادگرایان اسلامی خیلی دلشون میخواد که ما رو به 14-15 قرن قبل ببرن و به ما بگن همونطوری زندگی کنید.
The Islamic fundamentalisms, they really want to take us back 14-15 centuries ago and say you have to live as they did.
این کار البته درست نیست، برای اینکه همونطوری که 15 قرن قبل اون روحانیون سوار شتر میشدن حالا سوار جت میشن، بنابراین ما نمیتونیم همه چیزمون رو برگردونیم عقب.
And naturally this is not the right thing to do, because in those days the clerics used to ride camels, but now they have a jet-set life. So we cannot go back.
اما من یک جواب تاریخی هم به این زنها، به افرادی که مخالف خواندن زن هستن دارم.
But I have a historical response that I want to give to those who are against female singing.
وقتی که فاطمه دختر حضرت محمد رو میخواستن شوهر بدن و عروسی بود و عروسیش بود، میخواستن ببرن منزل شوهرش، زنها دست میزدند و در خیابان آواز میخوندن و فاطمه رو بردن خونه شوهرش.
When Fatima, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, was getting married, on her wedding day, the women were clapping on the streets, they were singing, and as they took Fatima to her husband's new home.
اگر 14 قرن قبل این اتفاق افتاد و محمد چیزی نگفت، چرا ما الان باید جلوی خوانندگی زنها رو بگیریم؟
So if over 14 centuries ago this thing happened and Prophet Muhammad didn't stop women from singing on the street, why should we stop our women singing now?
You've defended very difficult cases in court, some of which have never been resolved. Has there been any progress over the past, however many years? Have there been progressive changes?
من کیسایی رو برای دفاع انتخاب میکردم که از اون طریق به مردم نشون بدم که قوانین ما چقدر بده و بایستی برای اصلاح قوانین مردم قیام کنند و بخواهند که قانون عوض بشه.
I used to deliberately choose cases that actually showed that our laws were wrong and they were discriminatory, and that through that I wanted to highlight these cases and encourage people to stage an uprising and say that these laws have to change and they have to be amended.
در اثر یکی از محاکماتی که من دارم و در همین کتابم میخونید، یعنی محاکمه آریان که یک دختر 9 ساله‌ای بود که در منزل پدر با شکنجه کشته شد، این باعث شد که قانون حضانت در ایران به نفع زنها عوض بشه.
I remember it was in the course of a trial of a 9-year-old girl called Aryan, which is actually mentioned in my book. And she had been tortured to death in her father's house. And it was thanks to that trial that we managed to change the custody law in Iran.
البته باید اضافه کنم که اصلاح یک قانون فقط به تنهایی کار یک زن نیست، بلکه من سعی می‌کردم که یک چیزی رو به مردم نشون بدم که جنبش ایجاد بشه.
And of course I have to point out that amending a law is not something that just a woman should do on her own. I just wanted to highlight a problem so people could see for themselves how some laws need to be amended.
وقتی که سال 1979 انقلاب اتفاق افتاد، قوانین ایران همگی به ضرر زنها عوض شد.
When the 1979 revolution occurred in Iran, laws in Iran all changed to the detriment of women.
به همین دلیل من همیشه میگم سال 1979 انقلاب اسلامی اتفاق نیفتاد، بلکه انقلابی بود که مردان علیه زنان کردند.
That is why I always maintain that in 1979 that was not an Islamic revolution, it was a revolution by men against women.
بعد از انقلاب در اثر جنبش فمینیستی ایران که خیلی قویه، ما توانستیم که چند قانون رو عوض بکنیم.
After the revolution, thanks to the very strong feminist movement that we have in Iran, we managed to successfully amend some of the laws to the benefit of women.
اما این قدم‌های کوچک کافی نیست و ما تساوی کامل حقوق رو می‌خوایم و تا اون روز هم مبارزه می‌کنیم و می‌دونم که پیروز میشیم.
But these small steps are not enough. We want total gender equality, and we are not going to stand still until that is realized, and we will not keep quiet until that day.
How does the movement that you talk about, the feminist movement, go about achieving that? How can they bring that change?
روزهای اولی که انقلاب شد، جنبش فمینیستی در ایران خیلی ضعیف شده بود.
In the early days of the revolution, the feminist movement in Iran had weakened considerably.
و من گاهی اوقات حرفایی که می‌زدم یا مقالاتی که می‌نوشتم انعکاسی در جامعه نداشت و مثل این بود که در آینه دارم با خودم صحبت می‌کنم.
And I felt that the articles I was writing, the words I was expressing, they were of very little effect and they were not being reverberated throughout the society, and it felt like I was speaking to myself in the mirror.
اما به تدریج که این قوانین تبعیض‌آمیز تصویب شد، زنهایی که متعلق به خانواده‌های سنتی بودن، اونها هم متوجه شدند که قانون چقدر ظالمانه است و به تدریج آمدن به طرف ما.
But after these discriminatory laws were adopted, even women from traditional families in Iran, they noticed how discriminatory these laws were, and gradually they joined our movement.
و خوشحالم که الان جنبش فمینیستی خیلی پرطرفدار و قویه در ایران. حرفایی که دخترای خانواده سنتی ایران میزنند حتی رادیکالتر از حرفای منه.
And I'm really happy to see now that how the feminist movement in Iran has grown, that the daughters coming from these traditionalist families, what they are saying these days is even more radical than what I'm saying.
و به همین دلیلی که میگم ما پیروز میشیم.
Which is exactly why I maintain that victory is going to be ours.
So where does your strength come from for this long fight, which has been going on for so many years?
وقتی که شما به صحت راهی که میرید اعتقاد داشته باشید اون وقت قوی هستید.
When you truly believe in the truth of the path that you're going on, that gives you strength.
ضمن اینکه من مسلمان هستم و اعتقاد به خدا به من قدرت بیشتری میده.
Not to mention the fact that I am a Muslim and my belief in God gives me more strength.
من مسلمان هستم و با بنیادگرایی مخالفم.
I'm a Muslim and I'm against fundamentalism.
من مسلمان هستم و با بنیاد هراسی که در غرب رو به ازدیاده مخالفم.
I am a Muslim and I am against the Islamophobia that is growing in the West.
صحبت از شارلی ابدو بود و تراژدی که اتفاق افتاد.
Earlier, Charlie Hebdo case was mentioned and the tragedy that unfolded.
من بسیار متاسفم از این حادثه.
I am extremely sorry about what happened.
اما همون موقع که شارلی ابدو اتفاق افتاد در نیجریه فوکو حرام یک گروه بنیادگرای اسلامی 2000 نفر رو کشت.
But at the same time as the Charlie Hebdo incident happened, Boko Haram in Nigeria killed some 2,000 innocent people.
هیچ کس صحبت نکرد از اون 2000 نفری که به وسیله بنیادگرایان اسلامی در آفریقا کشته شده بودند.
Nobody said a word about the 2,000 that were killed at the hands of the Islamic fundamentalists in Nigeria.
و همون روزا هم اتفاق افتاده بود.
And they happened the same period as the Charlie Hebdo affair.
بنابراین وقتی که ما خوب نگاه بکنیم میبینیم که شاید اسلام هراسی که در غرب انقدر بهش دامن میزنن پشتش یک هدف سیاسی دیگری است.
So if we look more carefully, we will see that perhaps there is another aim, perhaps a political aim behind the Islamophobia that is growing in the West.
It seems ironic that when you were finishing writing your book, there was a possibility that it might not be published in America in English translation because of the sanctions against Iran. And you ended up having to fight to overturn an unjust law in America to get your book published. It strikes me as quite strange that you suddenly start fighting for, against injustice outside Iran.
من مخالف بی‌عدالتی در همه جای دنیا هستم.
Look, I'm against injustice wherever it takes place around the world.
وقتی که متوجه شدم که کتاب من رو در آمریکا چاپ نمی‌کنن برای اینکه دولت به خاطر تحریم ها من رفتم دادگاه و شکایت کردم در آمریکا.
When I realized that in the United States they were refusing to publish my books because of the sanctions Iran was subjected to, I actually went to court and filed a complaint against the US.
و پیروز شدم و بعد از پیروزی من خوشبختانه تعدادی از نویسندگان ایرانی توانستند که از این حکم استفاده بکنن و کتاباشون رو چاپ کنن.
And I won that case. And thanks to that victory, several other Iranian writers in the US, they succeeded in publishing their books.
هیچ کس نمیتونه منو ساکت کنه، نه آمریکا نه ایران.
Nobody can silence me, be it the United States or Iran.
That's it. Thank you very much, Shirin Ebadi. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Merci. Thank you. Thank you.